We start with the first black doctor and the first Indian assistant, casually laughing off the fact that the Earth seems to have been blown to smithereens and billions are now likely dustier than the aftermath of a Thanos snap. So, heading out on a random stop to take some more readings with his Vindicator contraption, the pair walk into the hangar bay of a random ship and promptly get turfed out like yesterday's trash. Kinda like the TARDIS did to that first female Doctor Bird, the very instant the historically male Doc regenerated and totally grew a pair of tits at one time. Guess the TARDIS knew how shit she was going to be ahead of time and kindly tried to give us a heads up. LOL! Anyway, after the opening titles, our heroes land pretty safely on the planet below 500,000 years in the future, and instantly proceed to lie to their new friends' faces about how they're totally their superiors using the Doc Psychic paper, what automatically projects whatever BS the writers need it to in order for the characters to nod and smile and just move the plot along already. And before you can say, well, if we're 500,000 years in the future, why do they look exactly the same as modern day humans and indeed use the same basic spacesuit designs? Platoon leader Shia Castellian totally falls for the fake ID, hook, line and sphincter like a total mug, before warning it will take them 5 hours to get their ship down here to take them back to the TARDIS, so they may as well tag along for this week's adventure. Turns out this is a Mercury mining outpost that mysteriously went silent 15 days ago and no one's heard from anyone since. So they're here to investigate and find out why a bunch of scientists alone in deep space on an isolated mining facility have all totally gone missing. And before you can say, this'll end well, they head inside and begin undressing, whilst Belinda worries that although there are no life signs anywhere on the planet, there may possibly be something alive and super cranky, living underground potentially maybe, and that may have been disturbed by all the fracking. But the doctor says, nah, it's impossible bro, given the intense radiation on this planet, and you're clearly off your poppadoms, girl. Before then getting bollocked by Cassio, the miserable military chief, who says pretty much the exact same thing that I've been yelling at my screen ever since his chocolate guy took over.
Oh, I'm just not loving the look, babes. I come in peace.
It's not appropriate to call me babes.
Okay, hon.
Fuck you!
Exiting the airlock, they immediately find a battered body and the place looking like the aftermath of a John Wick movie. But if it was set in space and written by the writers of Event Horizon, who are also massive gay lords. And they then find even more shot up peeps and all the mirrors smashed for some reason. Yeah, no wonder everyone's dead given how many years of bad luck they clearly gave themselves. A little later and they find a small deaf bird just chilling inside a central chamber. And before you can say, how are we 500 years in the future but these lot still haven't solved basic 21st century disabilities already? She reveals she's just some pussy old chef by the name of Alice Fenley, who's indeed the lone survivor of the facility, and currently surrounded by the bodies of her friends and colleagues who she had to blast away in self-defence because reasons. Naturally, they don't really trust this 28-year-old mum of one who keeps banging on about wanting to go home, despite just confessing to a bunch of murders, including her best friend who was allegedly trying to yeet her, especially when she insists they all just went mad, and not because she just kept putting pineapple in the bloody pizzas or some shit. So the Time Lord gives her a hug to calm her down, whilst Cassio just grows frustrated at his literal girl boss letting him get so close to a clear and obvious security threat. Whilst over in the main drilling room, they find the giant fuck off well they were mining that runs 5 miles deep and where no light has ever reached the bottom. Kinda like Kim Kardashian's vagina, or the bloody wallet of my super tight Uncle Dave. The Doc then gets to know platoon leader Shia, who bangs on about her tragic backstory about being some sort of child refugee who joined the armed forces and became an ace shooter. And despite them being 500,000 years in the future and them looking like bona fide human beings, he just can't believe they've never heard of the human race or that home planet Earth thing.
Oh shit, not good.
Worryingly, Belinda finds that none of the others have heard of it either, especially the deaf girl, lol. But before she can question them further, she spots some kind of demon creature hiding behind a small chef who's hard of hearing. But after them finding nothing there, she convinces herself it was all in her head. Like climate change, or the voice is currently telling Keir Starmer that he's totally still a man of working people.
My dad was a tall...
Meanwhile, the Doctor restores the disturbing last entry on the CCTV, whilst Belinda once again spots the demon thing and practically wets her fucking knickers. And so did I, to be fair, due to how loud that freaking musical score was.
Everyone's...
Fuck's sake, Murray. But although neither she nor the military goons see anything behind her, Alice won't let them check behind her, given this is exactly how it started before, where she ended up shooting up her best friend in the face, and not just because she said her macaroni was unchewable with zero flavour. The Doc then starts to figure things out and comes to a shocking realisation, when Shia reveals that this used to be a planet made of diamonds 500,000 years ago, and was the very same place where he lost his voice and almost got killed by a bunch of paranoid humans back when he was a spiky-haired white bloke in a snazzy suit, and wasn't yet transracial or even transgender. Because this is in fact the planet Midnight, and thus a super secret sequel to the season 4 epi from back in the day.
Wow.
I fucking knew it!
Now shitting more bricks in the Soros depository during the heights of an Antifa protest, the Doc arrives just in time to see the unseen entity hiding behind the deaf chef smack up a bunch of soldiers, whilst the furious Cassio demands answers right fuckity now, because they just can't believe there was indeed something alive and super cranky living underground and that's been disturbed by the drillers. And before you can say, well, we shouldn't be all that surprised this thing's totally snapped, given you too would probably wake up on the wrong side of the bed if some strange fuckers came to your house, started fracking in your garden and trying to steal all your precious valuable minerals from under your gaff. Alice then finally concedes that there is indeed something behind her all the time after it crawled out of the well like that bitch from The Ring, and is now hiding behind her and laughing, also all the time. As Belinda figures out that if you go directly behind her, and thus behind the entity, you'll end up getting totally deaded. And Alice further tells a paranoid Cassio that if he goes and kills her, then it'll jump on his back for frig's sake, just like it did to all her previous deaded mates who also fucking hated her cooking. And after the Doctor reminisces about his previous encounter with the entity, what made him the scariest he's ever been, and somehow even more fearful than that time he faced off against a BBC drag queen last season, Cassio totally snaps and enacts a mutiny against his stunning and brave DEI hired girl boss, and orders Shia to shut up and stand down, and for his men to totally go behind that pussy old chef with the defective ears, and prepare to finally end this menace once and for all. But unfortunately, his men all just end up getting inevitably deaded and tossed around the room like fucking ragdolls, as Shia orders Alice to do a 180 so the entity can totally take down the out of control paranoid traitor bastard for him. Now retaking command, Shia says it's finally time to get the heck out of Dodge already, but unfortunately they can't really take Alice with them, given she's infected with some sort of alien parasitic backpack and also can't cook for toffee. But luckily, the Doc does what he does best and has a little cry, before then coming up with a plan, which just involves having A-Shot Shia shoot a bunch of pipes so the entity can be reflected in the mercury streams, and thus promptly see itself and totally freak out in disgust. Much like I do whenever I accidentally glimpse my man boobs in the bathroom mirror in the morning.
Hey, that's fucked up.
And after doing exactly that and finally forcing Alice free, they all race to get back to the airlock as most of them head on up to leave. But because the dopey Doc stopped to have an irresistible sneak peek at the naughty monster thing, they then get trapped inside the airlock with said naughty monster thing, who's now out here currently harassing an innocent brown minority woman of colour.
Hate crime!
Naturally, the Doc eventually offers himself up to the demon thing what lives in a well because reasons, but also naturally, said demon thing don't want to live on the back of some pussy old crybaby Time Lord what keeps diminishing the dramatic impact every time he fucking does it. So Shia just says enough of all this gay emotional shit because it's time to bloody end it already. And just proceeds to do a hate crime of her own by blasting Belinda in the chest and thereby getting the monster transferred to her, before doing one of them self-sacrifice things and jumping 5 miles down the well and into the eternal dark abyss. The Doctor then just shrugs and runs back to check up on his exotic floozy, who hilariously just then stands by and watches some other donut healer, despite him supposedly being called the freaking Doctor.
What?
As Belinda just lies there and worries about the fact that now no one's ever heard of Earth or human beings before. And we end with the junior officer reporting back to her superiors about how they found an invisible alien would love to give unsanctioned back massages and terrorise little deaf chefs for shits and giggles, and have now totally nuked them all from orbit, after stuffing it back in its well and just hoping that'll totally do the trick against an ancient cosmic godlike creature who's been around for 500,000 years and shit. And at a shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming. Turns out her superior is that Mrs. Floodbird, who's still out here cameoing in every single episode for some reason. Before the writers go and undermine poor Shia's sacrifice by teasing the possibility that said ancient cosmic godlike creature who's been around for 500,000 years has potentially possibly maybe survived maybe, and is potentially possibly maybe now attached to the back of a black junior officer also maybe. And that's it, that's the epi. Though my favourite part, well aside from the fact that people now have interstellar tech but can't seem to solve common infirmities or invent a decent upgrade for modern hearing aids, was the long awaited return of the psychic paper. 'Cause man, I'd certainly have hours of fun with that Time Lordy fake ID. using it to blag my way into VIP parties, and finally being able to buy a kitchen knife off Amazon without the plod thinking I may be a typical Welshman planning to stab up a bunch of young white girls at Taylor Swift dance parties and shit. But anyway, on to episode 4. We start in London on New Year's Eve 2007, where I guess people just no longer give a fuck that the eye was recently discovered to be a giant transmitter that made mostly plastic people come to life back in the 2005 premiere episode, and no, I don't mean Simon Cowell or Katie Price. Anyway, the Doc and Bombay Belinda have finally realised they have a time machine and have got back to Earth before it exploded real good and proper on May 24th, 2025. But the super autistic ADHD Doc instantly gets distracted by a shiny 50p piece, what he promptly picks up from the piss-filled streets of London, and then offers to a random miserable kid who just appeared in the alley.
Okay.
And this Conrad lad just can't believe he's witnessed 2 immigrants arrive and depart illegally from their unlicensed transport vehicle and are now freely roaming about the city. Kya! Guess this shit has been going on for a lot longer than we all realised. No wonder I can't buy a friggin' house. So he runs off to tell his mum all about the mental blue box that travels in time and space and what also traffics immigrants whilst undermining native taxpayers' wealth and buying power in their own country. But she just clips him round the ear and tells him to stop being racialist and totally spoiling her new year before it's even begun.
So good for you, girl.
Turns out the adult Conrad is now a moderately successful podcaster. And his new guest today is that Ruby Sundaybird, what loves hanging about on ladders and also having multiple mums for some reason. After the opening titles, Connie Boy then randomly notices the Barmy police box, 17 years on from that night in London where he was physically abused by his female birthing parent and also offered money as a minor by a strange black man in an alley.
Right to jail, right away.
And so a year ago when this initially happened, he checked out the surrounding area and promptly got spunked on by an unseen alien beastie, as he overheard the Doc and Ruby talk about how this thing is called a shriek. And the green goo it just splurged all over him is actually a pheromone tracker, so it can now track him anywhere on Earth. So he's pretty screwed, son. So naturally, he just hides behind a small corner and takes a secret pic of a young girl without her consent, and now has spent an entire year trying to find her on social media to get her on the podcast. And mainly to ask her all about her unsanctioned travels with the ethnic minority bloke she hangs about with in his illegal space van and shit. But also naturally, she can't really talk about all her mental space adventures with her super camp foreign trafficker. So she just talks instead about how the secret shadowy unit agency are well brave keeping us safe from alien threats. And she means the proper bug-eyed aliens from space, and not the bloody bug-eyed aliens from the sea in Somalia and shit. Yeah, and he reckons there might be something of a cover-up conspiracy going on since UNIT never returns his calls to come on his crappy programme. But she just says, stop waffling on about Alex Jones type InfoWars shit and knock my bloody face off already. So now their boyfriend and girlfriend, she reveals how UNIT finally captured that shrieky beastie last year, so he's totally safe from being hunted to the ends of the earth by it and being gobbled up good and proper. And after they go on a series of dates and grow ever closer, he asks more and more about the Doctor and their adventures, given he's clearly super jealous and stuff. And whilst at a local pub after meeting his mates for the first time, she just can't believe the local electricity is going haywire when that's exactly what happens when the shriek thing's about because reasons. So she anxiously calls up the boss of UNIT to find out if it's just a super weird coinkydink, or maybe if said shriek thing's gotten loose somehow maybe. But Kate just says, listen bitch, it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm still working in my office like a right mug, given I'm postmenopausal and ain't got a single friend IRL. And you're probably just paranoid given that shriek thing is still locked up in its cage right in front of me. So shut up about it already. Anyway, after whining on about how she's still kind of in a state of shock, and probably still has a little PTSD after spending the whole of last year fighting literal gods, goblins, owls, slugs, bogies and even frightful BBC drag queens,
Bruh.
they're indeed attacked by a bunch more friggin' shrieks.
Oh shit, not good.
So she gets on the blower to UNIT to totally bollock him about gaslighting her earlier, telling her she was just paranoid and shit. And to now get over it bloody pronto, given this quite quaint little English village has now been overrun by brown-skinned aliens, but I guess this time at least not the stabby kind. So, silver linings I guess. But she heads on out to smack her bitch up, but immediately cucks out and runs away, when a clear and obvious low-budget man in a rubber suit climbs up on top of a nearby car and promptly gives them a little fright. Kia! I know this show is infamous for its cheap FX, but you would have thought all the Disney bucks would have totally helped the BBC up its game already. But luckily, the cavalry soon arrive in the form of a heavily OTT squadron of UNIT soldiers, as Kate promptly tries to maintain order and protect the civilians. whilst a small wheelchair scientist lady just can't figure out how any of this is possible, given there's no alien signatures in the area and shit. Gah, diversity eyes, eh? But at a shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming. Turns out the ferocious alien monsters, what totally look like comical low-budget men in rubber suits, totally turn out to be comical low-budget men in rubber suits, as in yet another shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming. Turns out Ruby's super cute new floozy guy, what was constantly asking about the Doctor and her space travels, is really a far-right fascist bigot Nazi guy who organised this whole thing to finally lure units out from the shadows, and all his bloody podcast followers were in on it too.
No way!
Yes way. Because they reckon these unit lot are just lying grifters wasting taxpayers' money, and there ain't no such thing as aliens, gods, slugs or grotesque BBC musical drag queen monster clowns. And he just seduced this dopey gullible Ruby girl simply to orchestrate this ruse, which is now being live streamed all around the world. And he proceeds to prove he's a far-right fascist bigot Nazi wrong'un by first implying Ruby Sunday's name sounds like a ridiculous invention made up for TV, and presumably by a bespectacled far-left homosexual, who indeed lives up to his initials by being retarded, and then proceeds to mock and humiliate the small scientist wheelchair lady by implying she's a shameless benefit scrounger to boot.
What a fucking liberty.
Naturally, the world then rightly turns against the super secret shadowy agency accountable to no one, yet is presumably still funded by off-the-books government money via public taxes, and who this show is still trying to make out of the good guys because reasons. And before you can say, why is Doctor Who now advocating for world police that are not beholden to anyone or any independent regulatory body that monitors his actions, whilst also hoarding super dangerous alien tech that could kill everyone on Earth, or just be secretly weaponised against the public without their knowledge or consent, and inevitably under the guise of their own protection? Conrad proceeds to dox various unit members and accuses them of spying on everyone and generally just doing a bunch of bad things, whilst TikTok then just has a giant meltdown about it, and not for something unreasonable for once. And as pressure mounts and Unit HQ is promptly protested, Kate worries about what will happen if said alien tech they're casually hiding on the premises gets out into the public, so swiftly initiates a COVID-style lockdown. But a naughty inside mole and local podcast lover later allows Conrad access to the internal elevators, where he eventually bursts in armed with a shooter and a live streaming GoPro strapped to his chest. And he promptly demands an on-camera confession, admitting that all this alien bollocks is just fake and gay cover stories, and they're really just siphoning off public money to develop man-made tech and unfathomable super weapons. Just like them plasma energy orbs that totally zapped MH370 a few years back. Allegedly. And after he goes too far and insults her deaded daddy, who started this organisation she now runs in his name and honour, she recklessly opens the case to the bona fide real shriek, what they captured last year after it totally ejaculated its goo on him, and now it's going to come to hunt him for a late night dinner. Now how's that for proof of alien life, bitch? And before he can say, well, I know the X-Files once told me the truth is out there, but this is taking the piss, son, he begs for help like a riot cuck, and soon ends up having to be saved by his ex-girlfriend with a stupid name. But the fucker just can't resist one last dig, as the writers take the opportunity to go full meta and incorrectly comments on the show's Disney funds.
At least your special effects are improving.
Wrong.
The next day, Kate gets bollocked by a team for going way too far, unleashing a man-eating monster beast from hell just to make a cowardly conspiracy theorist wet his knickers and say sorry for insulting her dead daddy. Whilst Ruby goes and gives her a hug and says I should probably stay away from blokes for a bit, given they seem to have a habit of getting me into dangerous life-threatening situations and then abandoning my needy arse.
So good for you, girl.
Elsewhere, Conrad is out here just chilling in jail, minding his own business, when suddenly, he's abducted by an extraterrestrial homosexual and just prays it ain't bloody probing time already. But luckily, he just gets bollocked for betraying the Time Lord's mate, and then insufferably lectured to about spreading misinformation and naughty mistruths, and even rather cruelly taunted about how he'll die in his cell alone and unloved at age 49 after a massive heart attack. And before you can say, why is the infamously kind and compassionate doctor bloke, known for loving and respecting all life and people, now randomly revelling in cruelty, and all for a guy who really isn't that bad or evil, and was just a sad obsessive who was indeed lied to by his own country and offered zero support after he met a time-travelling black man, was smacked up by his mum for years and got spunked on by an alien hell beast? We end with a traumatised victim of childhood physical abuse and lifelong gaslighting about how he didn't actually witness time travel as a kid when he clearly totally did, actually standing up to this insufferable illegal alien fella who has no right to be here and now has the gall to morally lecture people when he's out here kidnapping civilians against their will. and instead essentially tells him to go back to where he came from, like one hell of a based AF motherfucker, and to bloody get off his planet already.
And get off my world.
So good for you, girl.
Whilst Mrs. Flood appears again, and this time in a saucy prison guard costume, and kinkily tells him,
It's ever so big, isn't it?
which just sounds like the start of some kind of a horrific porn film, to be fair. And that's it, that's the epi. Though my favourite part, well, aside from the fact that I'm totally sure this time that this was a first week without tears from the first black crybaby doctor what can't stop blubbering, was just marvelling at how brilliantly constructed this plot was, given this dude wanted to prove that Unit was faking alien attacks, so thereby faked an alien attack himself, which Unit then responded to by showing up in force, and thus this somehow proves that Unit is a scam, because reasons.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'm a little lost, but fair enough.
And man, if I had a bloody pound for every Doctor-like Ruby-centric episode 4 containing a creepy scene in a village pub, and also for every Doctor-like Ruby-centric episode where the real monster is a politically influential straight white male who's portrayed as comically evil but kind of actually has a point, I'd have £2 bloody pounds.
Nice.
But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss a roast of episodes 5 and 6 when they drop. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time. And I'll start a local podcast for conspiracy theories just to get close to a pretty young agent and thereby expose shady government agencies and pray they don't just casually disappear me like they would in the real bloody world with you in the next one.